The heavy, cream-colored envelope lay on top of a stack of grocery store flyers. It felt heavier than its weight, as if the paper had absorbed the gravity of a government institution. The official seal, a golden bear against a blue field, was embossed in the corner with crisp precision. I ran a thumb over its raised surface. The Pasadena postmark was smudged, but the date was perfectly clear. I could tell there were several sheets inside. I took a kitchen knife, the one I'd just used to slice a lemon for my morning tea, and slit the envelope open along the fold. The movement was mechanical, part of the morning ritual I'd built for myself since Arthur's death to keep the days from blurring into a single, gray continuum. Inside were 3 pages, held together by a tight metal staple. The paper was thick, expensive to the touch, and smelled of ozone from a high-end office printer. I spread them out on the kitchen table, next to my cooling cup of tea. The heading was in a bold, severe font, "Petition for appointment of a temporary conservator." Below it were words that seemed to belong to another world, another life. Protection of assets from undue influence and dissipation, alleged cognitive incapacity, inability to make sound financial and medical decisions. My mind, trained for 40 years to find logic in the chaos of numbers, simply refused to process the stream of legalistic absurdity. It had to be a mistake. A sick joke. Perhaps some standard, horribly worded mailing sent to all California seniors, a misguided government initiative. But there, in the center of the first page, on the line for respondent, was my name, printed with flawless accuracy, Margaret Elizabeth Byrne. And then I lowered my eyes to the section that felt like it turned my blood to ice chips, clogging my veins. Petitioners. 2 names that were part of my heart, part of the promise I made to my dying husband. Julian Arthur Hayes. Leonard Thomas Hayes. Julian. Leo. I stared at the names, and the letters danced before my eyes. I shut them, but the names were seared onto the inside of my eyelids. I was standing in my sun-drenched kitchen, in my quiet house, and the world around me was slowly dissolving into pixels. It wasn't just a mistake. It was an anomaly. A fundamental breach in the order of the universe as I knew it. And the worst part, the most venomous part, was that just 2 days ago, I had looked them in the eyes across my dining room table and seen nothing but love. Sunday dinner. A tradition I had guarded like a holy relic since Arthur passed. The house smelled of rosemary and garlic from the leg of lamb roasting in the oven. Julian, as always, arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. He placed a bottle of good Cabernet from Napa Valley on the counter and kissed my cheek. "Maggie, that smells incredible. You're spoiling us." His hug was firm, confident. He scanned the kitchen. "New water filter? Good." I was just about to say it was time for a change. He always noticed everything. Leo was a half-hour late, bursting through the door like a gust of Santa Ana wind, loud, smiling, and clutching a bouquet of sunflowers. Sorry, got stuck in a meeting. Out-of-state investors, you know how it is." A new watch gleamed on his wrist, a shiny chronograph I hadn't seen before. "Nice watch, Leo," I noted. He proudly held it out. A gift from a partner. To celebrate a successful deal. Julian shot his brother a quick, almost imperceptible glance that I, at the time, interpreted as a reprimand for showing off. The dinner conversation flowed easily. We reminisced about Arthur. "Dad would have loved this lamb," Julian said. At one point, between the salad and the main course, he remarked, seemingly out of the blue, "You know, Maggie, Leo and I were talking. Have you reviewed your trust documents lately? A client of mine, an older lady, had a bad fall recently. Her power of attorney documents were outdated. It was a nightmare for her kids." He said it with such sympathy. Leo immediately chimed in, "Yeah, Maggie, there are so many scams out there targeting seniors. We just want to make sure you're protected. That no one can take advantage of your good nature." It sounded like concern. Absolute, genuine concern. "I could take a look at the paperwork for you," Julian added. "Purely from a professional standpoint. Just to spot any potential loopholes that need closing." In that moment, I felt a surge of gratitude. What wonderful boys I have. "They're just so good to me," I told Susan, my friend, as we glided down our lanes during morning aqua aerobics. I was so afraid the connection would fade after Arthur was gone. Nonsense, Susan huffed, kicking vigorously. You raised them. Still, I insisted. They're always around. They call, they visit. Julian is my rock. He came over last week and installed new antivirus software on my computer. Said the old one was useless. He checked all my online accounts, made sure I had strong passwords. And Leo? Susan asked. I smiled. Leo's my sunshine. He drops by just to tell me some nonsense and make me laugh. Says he's checking to make sure I haven't adopted 20 cats and started talking to the television. The other day, he brought over a huge box of donuts, and we watched an old Gregory Peck movie. He knows how much I love him. You're lucky, Susan sighed. My son only calls when he needs a babysitter or a loan. Thinks my pension is his backup fund. Yesterday, he suggested I sell the house, move into a little condo, and give him the difference for an investment. Can you imagine? I imagined it and shuddered. A spike of pride went through me. My family was different. Strong. I had kept my promise to my husband. I was safe. For days before the dinner, Leo called. His voice was tight, a frequency of stress humming beneath his usual bravado. Maggie, hi. Hey, quick question. Purely hypothetical. I'm closing a big deal and the bank needs an estimate of my potential assets. You know, formalities. What do you think your and Arthur's house is worth right now? A ballpark number? I need it for a report. The question was odd. My house wasn't his asset, not even potentially. According to Arthur's trust, it was mine and mine alone. But this was Leo. He always had some scheme, some project, some deal cooking. Without a second thought, I gave him a rough market estimate based on recent sales in the neighborhood. The number, in California's insane real estate market, was substantial. Wow, he breathed into the phone. There was something like awe in his voice. And greed, as I understand it now. Thanks, Maggie, you're a lifesaver. You're the best. He ended the call quickly. I just shrugged and went back to my roses. Just Leo, living in a world of big numbers and bigger plans. My official title before I retired was forensic accountant. I didn't just balance ledgers. I hunted for lies hidden in the numbers. I followed the trails of deleted data and phantom invoices to find embezzlement, fraud, and financial crimes. I could see patterns where others saw chaos. The other day, I was helping Susan with her accounts. We were at my kitchen table, papers spread everywhere. Look, I said, pointing to a line item on her statement. Here's the fee. Account maintenance service charge. And here's another one, investment management fee. They're charging you twice for the same thing by calling them different names. It's legal, but it's a deception. I took a calculator and in 10 minutes showed her how it added up to the cost of her Hawaiian vacation over the course of a year. Susan stared at me, mouth agape. How do you see that? I looked at this for a week and just saw a bunch of numbers. A habit, I'd replied. I was skilled at seeing patterns where others saw chaos. But I had consciously buried that skill. I wanted to trust. Why didn't I see any of it? Standing here now, with this letter in my hand, I understand. I didn't want to see it. My mind, trained to find anomalies, saw them. Leo's new watch. The strange question about the house's value. Julian's insistence on reviewing my trust documents. His story about the client who fell. They were red flags, signals, warnings. But my heart desperately wanted peace. It wanted to believe in the perfect family, in unbreakable bonds, in the idea that I wasn't alone. I made a deal with myself. I will only see what I want to see. And that deal had just cost me everything. The morning the letter arrived, I woke up in a wonderful mood. I had my coffee, talked to my sister. The day promised to be as calm and predictable as the hundreds of other days in my new, quiet life. When I saw the mail truck, I even went out to the porch and waved at the driver. I took the mail from the box myself. I brought the envelope into the house myself. I opened it myself. I had personally delivered the poison to the heart of my own fortress. I'm still standing in the kitchen. The envelope and its contents are lying on the countertop. The shock is receding like a tsunami, exposing the ugly, ruined landscape underneath. And on that landscape, beneath the rubble of trust and love, something else is stirring. Something cold, precise, and very, very angry. It is the voice of the forensic accountant. It does not weep or panic. It asks one simple question: what is our next move? I look at the names of the petitioners. They think I am a weak, sentimental, old woman. They have forgotten who I was. They have made an error. Not a legal one. A strategic one. They have started a war with a person who made a living finding and destroying lies. The first few minutes after reading the letter were a vacuum. My brain simply refused to accept the new reality, like a computer given an incompatible command. I mechanically walked to the sink, filled a glass with water, and drank it down. My hands weren't shaking. My body had switched to autopilot, a defense mechanism against a shock it couldn't process. I read the document again. And again. Exhibiting signs of cognitive decline, incapable of making sound financial decisions, each phrase was a hammer blow against glass. They didn't just want my money. They wanted to erase me, my identity, my mind. To turn me from a person into an object, an asset to be managed. And then the vacuum filled. A wave of nausea, hot and acidic, rose in my throat. I stumbled to the bathroom, bent over the toilet, and heaved, though my stomach was empty. My body was reacting before my mind, physically expelling the poison of their betrayal. Leaning against the cold tile, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. A pale face, wide, terrified eyes. Was this the woman they described in their petition? A confused, incapacitated old woman? In that moment, I almost believed them. Maybe I was missing something? Maybe I was losing my mind and I was the last to know? Doubt. It was their first and most powerful weapon. I didn't sleep. Lying in the bed where my husband had died, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like an intruder. But the main monster was my own memory, now a weapon turned against me. I replayed the last few months, the last few years. Every conversation, every visit, every piece of caring advice from Julian and Leo. It all looked different now, tainted, sinister. Julian's visit last Christmas. He'd given me a new tablet to make it easier for you to pay your bills online, Maggie. He'd helped me set it all up, patiently writing down the passwords for me. My passwords. He knew my passwords. A cold dread washed over me. That wasn't a gift. It was an infiltration. Sometime before dawn, as the sky outside my window began to lighten from black to a bruised purple, the grief and fear curdled into something else. A cold, crystalline rage. It was not the hot rage of a tantrum, but the quiet, focused anger of an auditor who has just found the fraudulent entry that unravels an entire criminal conspiracy. They had lied. They had falsified the very ledger of our relationship. And they would pay for it. I got out of bed. The victim was gone. In her place stood an analyst. I sat down at my old desktop computer in the study, a machine I hadn't turned on in months. It whirred to life, and my fingers flew across the keyboard. Google searches, conservatorship petition process California. How to contest temporary guardianship. Elder financial abuse attorneys Pasadena. For hours, I plunged into the digital jungle of legalese, reading statutes, legal blogs, forums filled with stories from other people who had been targeted. I learned the terms: petitioner, respondent, burden of proof. I understood the most critical thing: they needed evidence. Their word alone wasn't enough. They were going to present something to a judge. Something that had to look convincing. And I had very little time to find out what it was. I couldn't do this alone. I didn't need a generic family lawyer who would advise me to settle. I needed a predator. I opened my old address book, a relic from my past life. Most of the names were, like me, retired. But one stood out. Amelia Rojas. She had been a brilliant, hungry intern at Deloitte when I was a senior partner. Fierce, incredibly smart, with a reputation for not being afraid to go up against giants. I found her firm's website. Her specialty: complex financial litigation and corporate fraud. Perfect. At 9 a.m. sharp, I dialed her office number. The assistant's voice was brisk and cool. Rojas and Associates, how may I help you? My name is Margaret Byrne. I need to schedule a consultation with Ms. Rojas. It's urgent. She's fully booked for the next 2 weeks. I took a breath, marshaling the authority I hadn't used in years. Please tell her that Maggie Byrne from Deloitte is calling. Regarding a matter I believe she will find very interesting. The codename is the Family Audit. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Please hold. 30 seconds later, Amelia's energetic voice was on the line. Maggie? I can't believe it. What's wrong? While waiting for my appointment the next day, I prepared. I printed the petition. I pulled out 5 years' worth of financial records. Bank statements, brokerage reports, tax returns, a copy of Arthur's will, and our family trust. I spread them out on the large dining room table, turning it into my command center. Each number, each transaction, was a testament to my lucidity, my meticulous nature. I was a woman who balanced her checkbook to the penny. And these people dared to call me incompetent? At noon, my phone rang. The screen displayed his name, Leo. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, took a deep, calming breath, and forced myself to answer. My voice had to be normal. Calm. Hello, dear. Maggie. Hi. Listen, I was just calling to see how you are. At dinner the other night, you seemed a bit tired. Is everything okay? Are you taking your vitamins? The blood drained from my face. It was starting. They weren't just filing a petition. They were playing a game, building a case. Every word I said would now be twisted and used against me. I'm fine, Leo, I said, my voice a miracle of composure. Just didn't sleep well. Getting old is no picnic. Oh, stop that. He laughed, his charming, easy laugh that now sounded like a snake's hiss. You're solid as a rock. Okay, well, just checking in. Take care of yourself. I'll call you later. He hung up. I slowly lowered the phone. He wasn't just checking in. He was probing to see if I'd received the legal notice. My calm response had likely convinced him I hadn't. They thought they were giving me one more day of blissful ignorance, not realizing they had just given me the most valuable thing in the world, time. That evening, while reviewing my credit card statements for the files for Amelia, I found it. An anomaly I had previously overlooked. Several small, but regular, charges over the past 6 months. An online service called Very Play. The amounts were insignificant, $50 or $100 here and there, and I had previously dismissed them, assuming it was some subscription of Arthur's I'd forgotten to cancel. But now, with my senses on high alert, I typed the name into a search engine. https://www.google.com/search. Q equals Very Play. The homepage that loaded was a flashy, garish explosion of spinning slot machines and poker tables. An online casino. Sports betting, poker, slots. Leo. This wasn't just a series of unlucky startups. This was a gambling addiction. And judging by the frequency of the charges, he was in a deep, deep hole. This was no longer just about greed. This was about desperation. And a desperate man is capable of anything. This discovery forced me to reevaluate Julian. Mr. Proper, Mr. Responsible. Could he really not have known about his brother's problem? Or did he know, and was he covering for him? I remembered his words at dinner. Leo and I were talking. They were a unit. This wasn't Leo acting alone in a desperate haze. This was a conspiracy. Julian wasn't just an accomplice. He was the brain of the operation. He was using Leo's desperation as a battering ram, while he stood back, in his clean suit, playing the part of the caring son. This was so much worse than I had imagined. It was a cold, calculated, meticulously planned betrayal. I am sitting at the dining table, which is now covered in a sea of paper. Outside, the world is dark. The house is silent, but a storm rages in my head. My phone lies beside me. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I have my meeting with Amelia Rojas. I look at the photograph on the wall, Arthur and me on our wedding day, happy and full of hope. Take care of them, he'd asked. I'm sorry, my love. I will take care of them. But not in the way you meant. I pick up the petition again. On the final page, below their signatures, is an addendum, Appendix A. Video materials substantiating the respondent's unstable condition will be presented to the court at the hearing. Video materials? What does that mean? I don't know what they've prepared. But I know one thing. They think they are playing a game with a helpless old woman. They have forgotten that I dedicated 40 years of my life to bringing liars, thieves, and frauds to their knees. The game is on. Amelia Rojas's office was on the 42nd floor of a glass and steel tower on Grand Avenue that pierced the Los Angeles haze. The silence inside was absolute, broken only by the whisper of the ventilation system. It wasn't a place of dusty law books and mahogany. It was a minimalist cathedral of chrome, white leather, and intimidatingly expensive modern art. The view from the floor-to-ceiling window showed a sprawling, indifferent city. It was a place built for predators, and Amelia, in a flawlessly tailored navy blue pantsuit, was clearly the apex predator in this ecosystem. She didn't offer me coffee or platitudes. She gestured to a severe-looking white chair opposite her glass desk, upon which sat the petition and the neat file of financial documents I had brought. I laid out the facts as I knew them, my voice even, my delivery structured like the preliminary findings of an audit. I spoke of the Sunday dinner, of Julian's feigned concern, of Leo's probing question about the house's value. I presented the credit card statements, with the transactions to vary play highlighted in yellow. Amelia listened without interruption, her dark, intelligent eyes fixed on mine. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of professional neutrality. She had likely heard 100 stories of familial betrayal, of greed curdling love into poison. But as I detailed the methodical nature of their questions, the way they had offered to help with my digital security, I saw a flicker of something else in her gaze: recognition. She wasn't just hearing a story of elder abuse, she was hearing the preliminary stages of a meticulously planned financial crime. When I finished, the silence stretched. She finally steepled her fingers, her nails a deep, glossy red. "In California, Maggie," she began, her voice as crisp as the air in the room, "conservatorship is a hard sell. The petitioner has to provide clear and convincing evidence of incompetence. The law, in theory, is on your side." She paused. "But a courtroom is a theater. And right now, your stepsons are casting you in the role of a confused old woman. Their petition is filled with language designed to paint that picture: episodes of confusion, memory lapses, inability to manage daily finances. It's all subjective, but it plants a seed. And this," she tapped the last page of the petition, "this is their showstopper. Appendix A. Video evidence. We need to assume it's compelling. We need to assume it's designed to be emotionally devastating. So, what is our plan?" I asked, my voice steady. A faint smile touched her lips. "Good. You're a fighter. I like that. Our plan is aggressive. First, my office files our formal objection this afternoon. We will characterize their petition not as a misguided act of concern, but as malicious and predatory. Second, we file a motion for immediate discovery of all evidence, specifically this video. We want it now. Third," she leaned forward, her professional mask cracking into a look of genuine tactical glee, "we don't just defend. We investigate. They came at you with a story. We will come at them with data. You mentioned you were a forensic accountant at Deloitte?" I nodded. "Good," she said. "Then you and I are going to speak the same language." The video could be anything, Amelia explained over the phone 2 days later. A cleverly edited clip from a family gathering, a moment where you stumbled or slurred a word after taking medication. Or it could be a deepfake. That word hung in the air. I'd read about them, of course, seen the unsettling clips online of actors' faces mapped onto other bodies. The idea that my own face could be digitally puppeteered to betray me was a violation of a different order. "They're getting easier to make," Amelia continued, "but they almost always leave tracks. I have a man for this. He's not cheap, and he's an acquired taste, but he's the best digital forensics analyst on the West Coast. His name is Ben Carter." An hour later, I was on a 3-way secure video call. Ben Carter's face appeared on my screen. He looked like he'd just rolled out of bed in a college dorm room, with a mess of curly hair and a faded t-shirt for a band I'd never heard of. But his eyes were sharp, electric. "Amelia says you have a video problem," he said, skipping any pleasantries. His voice was a rapid-fire staccato of tech speak. Amelia started to explain, but I interrupted. "Mr. Carter," I said, my old professional persona taking over. "The file will likely be an MP4 or MOV container. What I need to know is, can you perform a full metadata analysis, EXIF data, creation and modification timestamps, the software used to encode? And beyond that, can you run a forensic analysis on the visual data itself? I'm talking about compression artifacts, inconsistencies in lighting, pixel-level deep learning-based detection for facial manipulation. There was a beat of silence. Then Carter blinked, then a slow grin spread across his face. Okay, he said, the staccato gone, replaced by a tone of genuine interest. You're not the usual client. Yes, ma'am. I can do all of that and more. I'll check for GAN splicing artifacts, analyze the audio for synthesis, and trace the source footage if it exists in the wild. If this thing is a fake, I'll find the digital fingerprints. Amelia gave me a look over the video call, a look of impressed surprise. Ben will need a retainer, she said. The number he quoted made me catch my breath, a significant chunk of the very assets I was trying to protect. It's your call, Maggie. I looked at the determined young man on my screen. This was a world I didn't understand, a battle fought with weapons I couldn't see. But I understood the logic of hiring an expert. Do it, I said, my voice firm. Send the invoice. The 2 weeks leading up to the preliminary hearing were the longest of my life. My house, once a sanctuary, became a fortress under siege. I stopped answering the phone, the sound of the ringer making my heart leap into my throat. Each ring could be them, spinning another web of feigned concern, gathering more evidence of my supposed fragility. I communicated only with Amelia through a secure messaging app she had installed on my tablet. The silence in the house was deafening, amplifying every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the bougainvillea against the windowpane. I felt their presence everywhere. One afternoon, I saw Julian's gray sedan parked down the street, half hidden by a jacaranda tree. He was just sitting there, watching. I stepped back from the window, my body cold with a mixture of fear and fury. He stayed for an hour, a silent, menacing sentinel, before driving away. The next day, a bouquet of lilies, my least favorite flower, the funereal flower, was left on my doorstep with a note in Leo's looping script. Thinking of you, Maggie. We're so worried. Please call us. It was a deliberate act of psychological warfare, a performance for any neighbors who might be watching. They were building their narrative, brick by brick. But they didn't know that I was building something too. I turned the large oak dining table, the site of so many happy family meals, into a war room. I unearthed decades of financial records. Every check I'd ever written to Leo for a down payment or a short-term loan. Every email from Julian with friendly advice on which stocks to sell. I created a spreadsheet, my fingers flying over the keyboard with an old, familiar muscle memory. Columns, rows, dates, amounts. I cross-referenced everything, creating a timeline of their escalating financial need and my naive generosity. It was a grim, painful balance sheet of my own blindness. I wasn't just a victim waiting for a verdict. I was a forensic accountant preparing for the audit of a lifetime. The rage kept the fear at bay. The numbers, unlike people, did not lie. It's here, Amelia's message popped up on my screen. Their lawyer just sent the evidence file. It's a video as expected. I'm uploading it to the secure server now. I suggest you pour yourself something strong. This is going to be unpleasant. I ignored the advice about the drink. I needed my mind to be perfectly clear. My hands, however, were not quite steady as I clicked the link and entered the password. The file downloaded. Evidence_exhibit_A. MP4. I clicked play. My own kitchen appeared on the screen, but it was wrong. Dark, filmed from a low, unsteady angle, as if from a camera hidden in a potted plant. Then, the screen version of me entered the frame. I was wearing the old, comfortable robe I often wore in the evenings. Her hair was a mess. Her movements were sluggish, clumsy. She stumbled, catching herself on the counter. She picked up a bottle of Maker's Mark, Arthur's old bottle, which had sat untouched on the bar cart for 3 years, and poured a large amount into a water glass, sloshing some onto the counter. Then she looked vaguely toward the camera, her face slack, her eyes unfocused. They just don't understand, she slurred, the voice a grotesque parody of my own, pitched lower and slower. It's all just numbers. They think I've lost it. But I see the patterns. She trailed off into incoherent muttering, taking a long, deep swallow from the glass before knocking it over. The video ended abruptly. I sat there, frozen, the silence of my real kitchen pressing in on me. The violation was so profound it was physical. I felt a phantom stickiness on my own counters, the ghost of spilled whiskey in the air. For one terrifying, unmooring second, I doubted myself. Had this happened? Was there a night I had drunk too much, a moment of grief-stricken weakness that I had blacked out? The image was so plausible, so horrifically intimate. It was my face, my robe, my kitchen. It was my voice, twisted into a pathetic slur. They had taken my grief for my husband and weaponized it, turning his favorite bourbon into their instrument of character assassination. The cold fury from before returned, burning away the shock. No, this did not happen. This was not a memory. This was an invention. And I would prove it. They were arrogant, Ben Carter said, and for the first time, I heard pure, unadulterated professional excitement in his voice. We were on another three-way call, 2 days later. They assumed they were dealing with a tech-illiterate senior and a small-town lawyer. They didn't think anyone would actually perform a forensic audit on the file. On my screen, Ben shared his own. It was a chaotic mess of code, waveforms, and image stills, but he navigated it with the precision of a surgeon. Okay, Exhibit A, the metadata. He highlighted a block of text. This video file was created and encoded on August 5, 2025, at 11:43 p.m. The software used was a commercial version of After Effects with a deepfake plugin called Face Swap Pro. Not exactly high-level stuff. It was last modified 2 minutes later. It wasn't filmed over weeks. It was manufactured in a single evening. He switched screens. Exhibit B, the audio. He showed 2 waveforms. The top is your voice from the video. The bottom is from a voicemail you left Julian last month, which Amelia subpoenaed from his phone records. The cadence, the pitch. It's a match. They used a voice cloning software. But look here, he pointed to a flat line in the video's audio track. The background noise. It's a perfect, 15-second loop of generic room tone. No refrigerator hum, no house settling creaks, nothing from the street. It's sterile. Fake. Then came the final blow. Exhibit C, the visual evidence. He pulled up a picture on the screen. It was me 5 years ago at my 62nd birthday party, laughing, my head tilted back. It was from my friend Susan's public Facebook profile. Beside it, he put a still from the deepfake video, where my face was slack and distorted in a drunken stupor. He drew a red circle around my mouth and eyes. They lifted your face directly from this photo and others like it, he explained. The AI stretches and morphs the original image to fit the new performance. But the lighting is wrong. The reflection in your eyes doesn't match the light sources in your kitchen. And here, he zoomed in until the pixels were a blurry grid around the jawline. You can see the digital seam. The algorithm couldn't perfectly blend the texture of your skin with the underlying video of the body actor. He looked directly into his webcam. Maggie, this isn't just a fake. It's a clumsy fake. It's a signed confession. A single, cold tear traced a path down my cheek. Not of sadness, but of vindication. The audit was complete. The fraud had been exposed. The courtroom for Department 9 of the Superior Court of Los Angeles County was a place designed to make you feel small. The ceilings were impossibly high, the wood paneling dark and imposing. I sat beside Amelia, my back straight, my hands folded calmly over my purse. Across the aisle sat Julian and Leo with their lawyer, a man with silver hair and a look of practiced gravitas. Julian met my gaze for a moment, his expression a perfect mask of sorrowful concern. Leo just stared at his hands. They were dressed for a funeral. My funeral. The judge, a stern-faced woman named Judge Atherton, read the petition with a neutral expression. Their lawyer, Mr. Jennings, began. He spoke in solemn tones about their deep love for me and their growing, heartbreaking concern for my well-being. He mentioned my isolation, my recent bouts of forgetfulness, my unusual financial decisions, the money I had given Leo. Then he moved to the main event. Your Honor, we would now like to present Exhibit A. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly, and a large monitor flickered to life. My stomach clenched as I saw my kitchen, my robe, my face appear on the screen. I forced myself to watch, to not flinch. I watched the digital puppet of me slur and stumble. I could feel the atmosphere in the room shift. A bailiff shifted uncomfortably. I could feel the judge's eyes on me, her expression now tinged with something that looked like pity. The video ended, and the lights came up. A heavy silence filled the room. Mr. Jennings let it hang there for a moment before speaking. As you can see, Your Honor, he said, his voice dripping with false sadness, this is not a woman who can be left to her own devices. My clients are here today not out of greed, but out of love. They are here to protect their mother. The word mother was a calculated twist of the knife. I felt a surge of white-hot rage, but I kept my face a perfect, placid mask. Amelia placed a calming hand on my arm. Her turn was next. Amelia rose slowly, her movements deliberate. She didn't look at the judge, she looked at Julian. Mr. Hayes, she began, her voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. You and your brother are deeply concerned about Mrs. Burns' well-being, is that correct? Yes, of course, Julian said earnestly. We love her. So you've been monitoring her closely? We've been checking in. Yes. Good, Amelia said, turning to the judge. Your Honor, the petitioners have presented a deeply disturbing video, but they have neglected to inform the court of its origin. We, however, have not been so negligent. She called our expert, Ben Carter, to the witness stand. Ben, looking surprisingly professional in a hastily bought suit, was sworn in. What followed was not a legal argument, but a clinical, brutal dissection. On the same monitor that had shown the fake video, Ben projected his findings. He started with the metadata. Your Honor, this file was created 3 weeks ago using professional video editing software. It was not filmed on a cell phone. He showed the audio waveforms. The audio of Mrs. Burns' voice was cloned from a voicemail she left her stepson. He looked directly at Julian, who flinched. Then came the masterstroke. Ben put Susan's public Facebook photo of my 62nd birthday party on one side of the screen and a still from the deepfake video on the other. The petitioners, or someone working for them, lifted Mrs. Burns' face from this and other publicly available images and mapped it onto another person's body. If you look closely at the lighting on the cheek, he used a laser pointer. It's inconsistent with the overhead lighting in the kitchen. And here, he zoomed in, you can see the algorithmic tearing at the jawline. He clicked a final button. Furthermore, the whiskey bottle they used as a prop, a 12-year-old Maker's Mark, was a gift to Mrs. Burns' late husband. We have the credit card receipt from when she purchased it for his birthday. In 3 years since his passing, the seal has not been broken. It sits on her bar cart to this day unopened. Amelia let that sink in. Then she turned to Julian and Leo's lawyer. Mr. Jennings, she said, her voice dripping with ice. Do you have any questions for my expert about the felony of submitting fabricated evidence to this court? Mr. Jennings, his face pale, stared at his clients, who looked like they were about to be sick. He shook his head slightly. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Atherton took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. She looked at Julian and Leo with an expression of profound disgust. The theatrical pity she had shown me earlier was gone, replaced by a cold, hard fury. I have been on this bench for 15 years, she said, her voice dangerously low. I have seen a lot of things. But this is a new low. She looked directly at the two brothers. You have come into this court under the guise of familial concern, attempting to strip this woman of her rights, her assets, and her dignity. You have done so using fabricated evidence, committing a fraud upon this court and upon the person you claim to love. She picked up her gavel. The petition for conservatorship is denied, with prejudice. This means you may never file such a petition against Mrs. Burns again. The gavel cracked against the wood block, the sound echoing in the silent room. But she wasn't finished. Furthermore, she continued, her eyes still locked on Julian and Leo, this court finds that there is significant evidence to suggest the crimes of perjury, conspiracy to commit fraud, and filing of a false instrument have been committed. I am referring this entire matter, including the expert testimony and the digital evidence, to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office for immediate criminal investigation. The color drained completely from Julian's face. Leo looked like he was going to collapse. Their lawyer was already packing his briefcase, trying to physically distance himself from them. The battle was over. I had won. But as Amelia and I walked out of the courtroom, past the frozen figures of my stepsons, I felt no elation. There was no triumph, only a vast, hollow emptiness where a family used to be. Julian took a step toward me, his hand outstretched, his mouth opening to say my name. I didn't slow down. I looked through him as if he were made of glass and walked out into the blinding California sun. 3 weeks later, I was back in Amelia's office. The view was the same, but I was not. The fear and uncertainty had been replaced by a quiet, unyielding resolve. Amelia laid out the options on her glass desk like tarot cards. The DA is moving forward with criminal charges, she said. They will likely face jail time, especially Julian for orchestrating it. But that is the state's justice. Then there is your justice. She pushed a document toward me. This is a draft of a civil lawsuit. We will sue them for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and attempted fraud. We will seek punitive damages. We can, if you wish, ruin them. Take everything they have and everything they ever hope to have. The house in Irvine. Their savings. Their future earnings. It's your call, Maggie. I looked at the papers. For a moment, I thought of Arthur. What would he want? He would want me to forgive. To preserve the family, no matter how broken. But Arthur wasn't the one whose face had been stolen and turned into a drunken puppet. He wasn't the one they had tried to erase. Forgiveness was a luxury I could no longer afford. This wasn't about revenge. It was about closing the books. It was about ensuring that the final entry in this ledger was written by me. File it, I said, my voice perfectly calm. File it today. Months passed. The autumn rains came, washing the dust from the air. The criminal and civil cases moved at the slow, grinding pace of the legal system, but they were Amelia's problem now, not mine. My life found a new rhythm. I still went to aqua aerobics with Susan. I still worked in my garden. But something had changed. The sleeping forensic accountant inside me was now fully awake. I started volunteering, offering free financial counseling to other seniors at the community center, teaching them how to spot predatory scams, both from strangers and from family. I was turning my pain into a shield for others. One afternoon, I was repotting a succulent, my hands deep in the rich, dark soil. The sun was warm on my back. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Amelia. A preliminary settlement offer from the boy's lawyer. It was a large number. I read it, put the phone down, and continued to firm the soil around the plant's roots. They were trying to balance the books with money. But I knew better. Some debts can never be repaid. They can only be written off, carried to the loss column, and closed out forever. I took a deep breath, the air smelling of damp earth and blooming jasmine. The house was quiet. My house. The numbers were settled. The balance sheet of my life was, for the first time in a long time, finally my own.